For those of you who are not familiar with the Samson option, I'm going to go over it thoroughly in Wikipedia, and for those of you who are completely familiarized with the Samson option, just go ahead and use a timestamp. I'm going to go ahead and read this thoroughly because it's necessary and important to discuss the next things that I'm going to discuss in this video. The Samson option is Israel's deterrent strategy of massive retaliation with nuclear weapons as a last resort against any country whose military has invaded and or destroyed much of Israel. Commentators have also employed the term to reference to such situations where non-nuclear, non-Israeli actors have threatened conventional weapons retaliation. The name is a reference to the biblical Israelite judge Samson, who pushed apart the pillars of a Philistine temple. And for those of you who don't know who the Philistines were, they were on the coastlands of southern Israel, Gaza, for example. The name is in reference to a biblical Israelite judge Samson, who pushed apart the pillars of a Philistine temple, bringing down the roof and killing himself and thousands of Philistines who had captured him. Israel refuses to confirm or deny it has nuclear weapons or how to describe it would use them, a policy of deliberate ambiguity known as nuclear ambiguity or nuclear opacity. This has made it difficult for anyone outside the Israeli government to describe the country's true nuclear policy definitively, while still allowing Israel to influence the perception, strategies, and actions of other governments. However, over the years, some of Israeli leaders have publicly acknowledged their country's nuclear capability. Ephraim Katzir in 1974, Moshe Dayan in 1989, Shimon Peres in 1998, and Ehud Olmert in 2006. During his 2006 confirmation hearings before the United States Senate regarding his appointment as George W. Bush's Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates admitted that Israel had nuclear weapons, and 2 years later, in 2008, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter stated that the number of nuclear weapons held by Israel to be 150 or more. In his 2008 book, The Culture of War, Martin van Creveld, a professor of military history at Israel's Hebrew University, wrote that since Gates admitted that Israel had nuclear weapons, any talk of Israel's nuclear weapons in Israel can be led to arrest, trial, and imprisonment. Thus, Israeli commentators talk in euphemisms such as doomsday weapons and the Samson option. Nevertheless, as early as 1976, the CIA believed that Israel possessed 10 to 20 nuclear weapons. By 2002, it was estimated that the number had increased between 75 and 200 thermonuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs, each in the multiple megaton range. These are big dogs. Kenneth Brower has estimated as many as 400 nuclear weapons. These can be launched from land, sea, and air. This gives Israel a second strike option even if the country is, much of the country is destroyed. In 1991, American investigative journalist, Pulitzer Prize winning political writer Seymour Hersh authored the book The Samson Option, Israel's Nuclear Arsenal and American Foreign Policy. In the preface of the book, he writes, "This is a book about how Israel becomes a nuclear power in secret. It also tells how that secret was shared and sanctioned at times, willfully ignored by the top political and military officials in the United States since the Eisenhower years." Although nuclear weapons were viewed as ultimate guarantor of Israel's security, as early as the 1960s, the country avoided building its military around them, instead pursuing absolute conventional superiority so as to forestall a last resort nuclear engagement. Are you seeing the picture? Are you getting what's going on here? The original conception of the Samson option was only as deterrence. According to American journalist Seymour Hersh and the Israeli historian Avner Cohen, Israeli leaders like David Ben-Gurion, Shimon Peres, Levi Eshkol, and Moshe Dayan coined the phrase in the mid-1960s and named it after the biblical figure Samson, who pushed apart the pillars of a Philistine temple, bringing down the roof and killing himself and thousands of Philistines who captured him, mutilated him, and gathered to see him further humiliated in the chains as retribution for his massacres of their people. They contrasted it with the ancient siege of Masada, where 936 Jewish Sicarii committed mass suicide rather than be defeated and enslaved by the Romans. In an article entitled Last Secret of the Six-Day War, the New York Times reported that in the days before 1967, Six-Day War Israel planned to insert a team of paratroopers by helicopter in the Sinai. Their mission was to set up and detonate a nuclear bomb on a mountaintop as a warning to belligerent surrounding states. While outnumbered, Israel effectively eliminated the Egyptian Air Force and occupied the Sinai, winning the war before the test could even be set up. Retired Israeli Brigadier General Yitzhak Yaakov referred to this operation as the Israeli Samson Option, but it wasn't. At least the invasion wasn't. He is referring to the explosion in the Sinai desert, and I think that would be an extremely unwise idea. In the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Arab forces were overwhelming Israeli forces, and Prime Minister Golda Meir authorized a nuclear alert and ordered 13 atomic bombs to be ready for use by missiles and aircraft. And I remember very distinctly my dad talking about this over and over and over, and he just would not stop talking about it. The words were, "Shoot down the Blackbird and loose the doomsday weapon." That's what she said. The Israeli ambassador informed President Nixon that very serious conclusions may occur if the United States did not airlift supplies. Nixon complied. This is seen as by some commentators on the subject as the first threat to use the Samson Option. I can promise you that those threats have continued because the American government only see Israel as dirt under their feet to use strategically for their own military purposes. Seymour Hersh writes that the surprising victory of Menachem Begin's Likud party in the May 1977 national elections brought to power a government that was even more committed than Labor to the Samson Option and the necessity of an Israeli nuclear arsenal. Luis Rene Perez, a professor of political science at Purdue University, chaired the Project Daniel, a group advising Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. He argues that in the final report of the Project Daniel and elsewhere, that the effective deterrence of the Samson Option would be increased by ending the policy of nuclear ambiguity. In a 2004 article, he recommends Israel use the Samson Option threat to support conventional preemptions against enemy nuclear and non-nuclear assets, because without such weapons, Israel, having to rely entirely upon non-nuclear forces, might not be able to deter enemy retaliations for the Israeli preemptive strike. Now, have I made the Samson Option danger to this world abundantly clear? Ari Shavitz writes in Israel's nuclear strategy, concerning anything and everything nuclear, Israel would be much more cautious than the United States and NATO. Concerning anything and everything nuclear, Israel would be the responsible adult in the international community. It well would understand the formidable nature of the demon and keep it locked in the basement. That's what he thinks. David Perlmutter says here, Israel has been building nuclear weapons for 30 years, and he is This is his opinion piece in Louisiana State University. The Jews understand what passive and powerless acceptance of doom has meant for them in the past, and they have insured against it. Masada was not an example to follow. It hurt the Romans not a whit, but Samson in Gaza? What would serve the Jew-hating world better in repayment for thousands of years of massacres but a nuclear winter? But we're not talking about Gaza here right now, folks. No, we're not. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. Or invite all those tut-tut European statesmen and peace activists to join us in the ovens. For the first time in history, people facing extermination while the world either cackles or looks away, unlike the Armenians, Tibetans, World War II, European Jews, or Rwandans have the power to destroy the world, the ultimate justice. In his 2012 book, How the End Begins, The Road to a Nuclear World War III, the American Jewish author Ron Rosenbaum describes this opinion piece as goes as far as to justify a Samson Option approach. In that book, Rosenbaum also opined that in the aftermath of the Second Holocaust, Israel could bring down the pillars of the world, attack Moscow, and the European capitals, for instance, as well as the holy places of Islam, and that the abandonment of proportionality is the essence of the Samson Option. Okay? Now, right here, Israeli poet and Holocaust survivor Itamar Yoaz Kest published a poem entitled The Right to Exist, a poem letter to the German author, this German author, who criticized Israel's nuclear weapons program. So, this Israeli poet responded in this way. If you force us yet again to descend from the face of the earth to the depths of the earth, let the earth roll towards the nothingness. Do you understand, folks, what never again means? Well, you better wake up and find out. Israeli Jerusalem Post journalist Gil Ronan saw this poem as referring to the Samson Option, which he described as the strategy of using Israel's nuclear weapons for taking out Israel's enemies with it, possibly causing irreparable damage to the entire world. Now, I want you to save that. Save this article. Go over it carefully yourself at home. Tell it to your wife, your husband, and your children. And understand what events are likely to take place. Now, unfortunately, I have to go to a website of an enemy of Israel, a hater of Israel, but he has ties to the Pentagon and three-letter agencies. So I guess it was last night. His article was urgent. It's on like Donkey Kong. Pentagon tells me Israel to be attacked by Iran within the next 72 hours. Urgent, my former colleagues in the intel community for my years working with the FBI Joint Terrorist Task Force told me tonight Iran and its allies will launch a large-scale attack upon Israel within the next 72 hours. Tonight there is also word from intel sources that a warning and threatening message sent by France from its embassy in Tel Aviv through the Lebanese government to Lebanon, that any response that extends deep into Israel will be met with a violent and crushing response against the party's targets in the southern suburbs, Baalbek, and vital facilities in the capital, Beirut. Hezbollah's response to the French mediation: we do not have time to de-escalate. Our response has not been subject to any rules since the moment of assassination in the southern suburb, and what we will be revealed in the coming hours. For keen observers, the fact that France chose to involve itself and to do so by conveying a threat is a stupefying example of the level of arrogant bravado and sheer incompetence within Western governments nowadays. And of course, see, this guy, Hal Turner, sides with the terrorists. He sides with Hezbollah. He sides with Iran. He sides with Russia. Intel has confirmed that a senior Hezbollah official has asked Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's brother to prepare the elite Syrian 4th Armored Division for the reopening of the Golan Front and an extensive war. The Golan can be reopened because Israel has repeatedly bombed Syria over the past 2 years, thereby voiding the ceasefire for the Golan Heights, which Israel took from Syria. U.S. spy satellites observations confirm Iran has begun preparations for retaliation against Israel. Other intel has determined that the retaliation is presently planned to take place after Friday's funerals in Iran. The final order will be given by Khamenei. Given the activities in Iran and the communications between Hezbollah and the Syrian army, the elements inside Israel are rapidly waking up to the reality that Israel may be defeated. What did we just discuss? The Israel Samson option. There's a whole lot more than what Hal Turner said, and I'll get to that in a minute. Lastly, Hezbollah has turned off their cell phones that do not respond to mediators who want to contain the escalation and prevent a response strike to the bombing of the suburb. Hezbollah closed all communications with all parties regarding the escalation. Now, let's go to the next article. Same website, but I'm going to go to Sputnik next. This is this morning, 9:28 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Iran issued NOTAMs, military action. The Republican Guard commanders all no-shows at prayer ceremony. Of course there are no-shows at prayer ceremony. They don't want to get assassinated either. All right? Government for Iran has issued notices to air missions, closing certain airspace to their country for military action emergency, which may mean missile launches. Moreover, none of the commanders of the Iranian Guard Corps were attendants at the prayer ceremony this morning. Busy preparing? What's strange about this is it doesn't seem to be a reason for this. No funerals today unless they are receiving dignitaries and want to treat the airspace as a security zone for that. More interesting, today's prayer ceremony, photo at the top, attended by Iran's supreme leader, saw notable absences. Not one commander from the Revolutionary Guard Corps was seen at the prayer ceremony, not one. As reported last night, extensive preparations for military attack by Iran against Israel has been confirmed to be underway by satellite imagery and the communications intercepts story here. All this trouble triggered by the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, is made all the worse because the killing took place 750 meters from the residence of the president of Iran. Okay? Top Iranian officials will meet today with the representatives of Iran's regional allies from Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen to discuss potential retaliation against Israel after the killing of Haniyeh in Tehran, 5 sources told Reuters news service. In urgent news just breaking at 8:44 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time today, the head of national security in Iran just publicly stated that Israel will be attacked from several fronts. And I assume that means from Lebanon, from Syria and from Iran. All right. In addition, breaking news as of 8:48 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Lebanese media reported an Israeli strike in the southern Lebanon, Kafr Kila, in what would be the first attack since the assassination of Hezbollah's military chief in Beirut on Tuesday. And of course, he inserts his Nazi-style lies by saying Israel's murder spree is ongoing. No, Israel's self-defense is ongoing. In Israel, approximately 30 factories storing hazardous materials in northern Israel received closure orders from IDF, and those orders require that the shedding of hazardous materials as is practical, so inbound missile strikes don't cause toxic clouds or hazmat dispersal. This single order gives credence to the fact that a major attack upon Israel is now likely and expected. By all intel assessments, the attacks will come tomorrow, Friday, August the 2nd, 2024, after the funerals in Iran. Update 9:28 a.m. Today, Iran's foreign minister has notified Qatar and Saudi Arabia that a military operation against Israel is imminent, cautioning them not to allow their airspace to be used against Iran. Okay. Now, but I want to show you something, that the Soviet Union initially was the first to greet Israel into the nations with open arms. Oh, what a big change has happened here. Soviet Union and the Arab-Israeli conflict. The official Soviet ideological position on Zionism condemned the movement as akin to bougie nationalism. Vladimir Lenin claimed to be deeply committed to egalitarian ideas and universality of all humanity, rejected Zionism as a reactionary movement, bougie nationalism, socially retrogressive, and a backward force that deprecates class divisions among Jews. Soviets believed that the main objectives of the Zionist movement was to bring about mass migrations of Jews into Israel from countries where they had been scattered among the general population, with a special emphasis placed on the Soviet Union. Under Joseph Stalin's rule, he initially accepted a limited emigration of Jews from the Soviet Union into Israel in order to invest in what he hoped would be a socialist Israel. So he compromised a little bit. For Soviet foreign policy decision makers, pragmatism took precedence over ideology. Without changing its official anti-Zionism stance, from late 1944 until 1948 and even later, Joseph Stalin adopted a pro-Zionist foreign policy, apparently believing that the new country would be socialist and would accelerate the decline of the British influence in the Middle East. Now, see, this is how the United States treats Israel too. They are only using Israel as a tool against Russia. Soviet Union wanted to use Israel as a tool against the British influence in the Middle East. The USSR began to support Zionism at the UN during the 1947 UN Partition Plan debate. It preferred a Jewish Arab binational state. But if this proved impossible, it indicated that it would support partition and a Jewish state. On the 14th of May 1947, the ambassador Andrei Gromyko announced, "As we know, the aspirations of a considerable part of the Jewish people are linked with the problem of Palestine and its future administration. This fact scarcely requires proof. During the last war, the Jewish people underwent exceptional sorrow and suffering. United Nations cannot and must not regard this situation with indifference, since this would be incompatible with the high principles proclaimed in its charter. The fact that no Western European state has been able to ensure the defense of the elementary rights of the Jewish people and to safeguard it against the violence of the fascist executioners explains the aspirations of the Jews to establish their own state. It would be unjust not to take this into consideration and to deny the right of the Jewish people to realize this aspiration. Of course, they only said this to try to use the Jews in Israel as a tool against the British. Shortly after the speech, the Soviet media temporarily stopped publishing anti-Zionist material. Temporarily. It followed this policy and gave the support to the UN plan to partition the British-mandated Palestine, as they say, which led to the founding of the State of Israel. On May 17, 1948, 3 days after Israel declared independence, the Soviet Union legally recognized it de jure, becoming the first country to grant de jure recognition to the Jewish state. In addition to the diplomatic support, arms for Czechoslovakia, part of the Soviet bloc, were crucial to Israel in the 1948 war. But what happened? What happened? The USSR soon switched sides in the Arab-Israel conflict after it tried to maintain a policy of friendship with Israel, at first abstaining from and allowing the passage of the Security Council Resolution 95 in September 1951, which chastised Israel for preventing ships bound for Israeli ports from traveling through the Suez Canal, asking them to cease interference on shipping for political purposes. In the latter part of 1953, it began to side with the Arabs in the armistice violations discussions in the Security Council. As late as December 1953, the Soviets were the first state to instruct their envoy to present his credentials to the President of Israel in Jerusalem, the Israeli annexation of and usage of the capital being controversial. This move was followed by other nations, strongly protested by the Arabs as flouting UN resolutions. On January 22, 1954, the Soviets vetoed a Security Council resolution relating to a Syria-Israeli water dispute because of Arab objections for the first time, and soon after vetoed even a mild resolution expressing grave concern that Egypt was not living up to the Security Council Resolution 95. This elicited Israel complaints that the resolution recognizing its rights could not pass because the Soviet veto policy. At the same time, however, the Soviets did support the Israel demand for direct negotiations with Arab states. You see, just like NATO, Russia was playing both sides against the middle. You see? And of course, when you go down to 67, in 67, Moscow launched an unprecedented propaganda campaign against Zionism as a world threat. Defeat was attributed not only to tiny Israel alone, but to an all-powerful international force. Its flagrant vulgarity in this new propaganda assault soon achieved Nazi-era characteristics. The Soviet public was saturated with racist canards, extracts from Trofim Kichko's notorious 1963 volume, Judaism Without Embellishment, were extensively republished all over the Soviet media. And on, and even the protocols of the elders of Zion were given nationwide coverage. Now I will go to the last article here. On Sputnik. 13 hours ago, full-scale Mideast war is the only way to shaky peace. This said by none other than second in command, this guy. Dmitry Medvedev. Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev suggested that a full-scale war in the Middle East is the only way to shaky peace in the region. Let me translate. Let me translate what he is saying here for you. The only way for peace in the Middle East is for all of Israel's enemies to devour Israel. So I provided you the Soviet Russia what do you call that? Ideology or strategic doctrine concerning Israel. And it seems like nothing has changed. And not in the Middle East is tightening. I regret the loss of innocent lives. They are the hostages of a disgusting state, the United States. Meanwhile, it is clear to everyone that a full-scale war is the only way to shake peace in the region, Medvedev wrote on Telegram. On Wednesday, Palestinian Fakestinian movement Hamas reported the death of its political leader Ismail Haniyeh as a result of an Israeli strike on his residence in Tehran, where he has arrived to participate in the inauguration of Iran's new president. The movement blamed Haniyeh's death on Israel and the United States and said that the attack would not be left without a response. Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin said he had nothing to comment on in the death of Hamas political chief and Israeli involvement. Israel Army officials said they do not respond to media reports about his murder. The Jerusalem Post reported that Israeli authorities had instructed ministers not to speak out about Haniyeh's death. Okay. There is no doubt Ismail Haniyeh's killing will have an extremely negative impact on the indirect contacts between Hamas and Israel, which offered a framework for achieving a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip on mutually accepted. There is not ever going to be any peace between Gaza and Israel. One will have to be removed from the earth. But you see what Russia has done. They've given their stamp of approval for the coming invasion of Israel. So if you haven't figured out by now who the initial parties, and do not be surprised if Turkey joins in fact, the scripture absolutely points out to Anatoly joining in. I'll go to this here to prove it to you. This would be in the 6th plague. 6. Right here. Now, you can go and do your research and you can realize for yourself that the Euphrates River is indeed dry. And the 6th messenger poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. It's no longer great, and the water thereof wasted away. Wasted away. Stiffened, withered. Okay? It is in a withered state. There is absolutely no question that the king of what? Anatoly might be prepared so the king of Anatoly is going to be instrumental. I'll have to do it like this then. and there is Anatolia. All right? They are going to be instrumental in all of this. And do not forget what the, was it the president of Turkey said last week? Foreign Minister of Israel urges NATO to expel Turkey after Erdogan threatens to invade Israel. So what I'm telling you here is you now see who the parties are in this coming war, the Yoel 3 war, the Ezekiel 38-39 war. You now see who the parties are. Israel Foreign Minister urged NATO to expel Turkey on Monday after its President Erdogan threatened that his country might enter Israel like it entered Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh in the past. In light of the Turkish President Erdogan's threats to invade Israel and its dangerous rhetoric, Foreign Minister Israel Katz instructed diplomats to urgently engage with all NATO members, calling for the condemnation of Turkey and demand its expulsion from the regional alliance, the ministry said. Now, folks, can you see the urgency of the situation now? We're this close to the Samson option. The world has gotten that close before. And if Israel has to loose all their nukes, that alone could cause a horrific nuclear winter on the earth. But wait. If the world thinks they could attempt to recover from that, EliYah the prophet is coming, aka the two witnesses. And if you think that Israel launching nukes, and not only that, but Russia launching nukes at the West in retaliation, as we read in the 6th shofar sound, it appears to look like the one who has the ribbon of St. George launches enough nuclear weapons against their enemies, do their own version of the Samson option. We still have the two witnesses to contend with. They're going to bring three and a half years of no rain. It says, these have power to shut the sky, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy. They have the power over waters to turn them into blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they wish. And what is their duty? What is their responsibility? These two witnesses are these men, this right here, verse 17 in the next chapter. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of not God, not God, but Jehovah, and have the testimony of Yehoshua HaMoshiach. Christians do not have the testimony of Yehoshua HaMoshiach. These are the two witnesses that the dragon was wroth with. Why is he wroth with the two witnesses? Because they brought 3.5 years of no rain upon the earth. For what reason? To turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children to their forefathers of Israel. What was the point of EliYah the prophet? What was his point? Let's see if I can find it. Second Kings, and then I have to go. I believe here. Give me a second. Ahab and the false prophets. Let's see here. Ahab. Wait a minute. I got to go to the previous chapter. And another one. Is it here? Okay. And it came to pass, after an abundance of days, that the word of Jehovah came to EliYah. Remember, he prayed that there would be no rain upon the earth, saying, Go and show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And EliYah went to show himself to Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. Now we scroll down here. So Obadiah went to tell Ahab to meet EliYah. And it came to pass when Ahab saw EliYah, that Ahab said unto him, Are you the one who troubles Israel? And he answered and said, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house, and that you have forsaken the commandments of Jehovah, and you have followed after Baal. Now therefore send and gather me all Israel to Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal, 450, and the prophets of the groves, 400. So that was a total of 850 false prophets which eat at Jezebel's table. Okay? And they were all gathered about. And Ahab sent all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets. So all Israel had to come together unto Mount Carmel. And EliYah came unto all the people and said, How long do you halt between two opinions? Of Jehovah be Elohim, follow him, not Baal. So the people answered him not a word. So after all of this, the futility of the prophets of Baal, verse 36, EliYah's prayer. And it came to pass in the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that EliYah the prophet came near and said, Jehovah, not the Lord, Elohim, not God, of Abraham, Yitzhak, and of Israel, let it be known today that you are Elohim in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done I have done all these things at your word. Hear Jehovah, hear or testify that this people may know that you are Jehovah Elohim, and that you have turned their heart back again. That's where the statement is made in Malachi, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. This EliYah the prophet that is to come. They are the two witnesses. How are they going to do this? Let me see if I can find it. By faith. Not in James 5:17, but in Yaakov 5:17. Even the German Bible says Jacobi or Jacobi 5:17. Why the English replaced the name with James, it baffles me. EliYah was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. So if you are not convinced that the two witnesses are the EliYah, the prophet to come in the book of Malachi, you now know that it was 3.5 years that there was no rain upon the earth. And we see here in Revelation 11, the two witnesses, it says, these have the power to shut heaven that it rain not in the days of their prophecy. How long is their prophecy? Their prophecy is, the days of the prophecy is, they shall prophesy 1,260 days. Let's get out the calculator. $1,260 days. 60 is 60. Divided by 12 equals what? Wait a minute. That's not right. Oh, let me try again. 1,000. I need to do a better equation here. 1,203.60. That's 105 months. So 105 months, is that right? Let's just start over. 1,260 days. Should I divide it by 30? But if I divide it by 30, I'm going to get the months. And then divide it by 12. Okay. Divided by 30. Divided by 12. 3.5 years. There you have it, folks. All right? That is exactly 3.5 years. The same amount of years that EliYah the prophet prayed that it would not rain on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. The two witnesses will come after the Samson option is loosed. And I dare say after Russia has launched their nukes against the West. Unless there is another plan in place that we don't know about. And the Samson option will have to be used, folks. Because the world has been treating Israel like the dirt under its feet. Using that dirt under its feet for their own strategic purposes. Israel has told the world over and over and over again, never again. But the world is not listening. So the world must pay. The world must pay the price for rejecting the warning, never again. And that price could be coming sooner than you think. I would strongly suggest that you have yourself ready. Have your suitcases packed, your supplies ready, because, folks, the two witnesses are going to do what is written in Isaiah 66. And I've gone over this over and over and over again. There's no excuse for not knowing these things. This is when Jerusalem is reborn, born again. Then comes the final judgment against the wicked, Jehovah's final judgment against the wicked. Those swine eaters, okay, that would be the Gentiles, namely among the tribes of Japheth, but others too. It shall come to pass that I will gather the Gentiles and tongues. Read Yoel 3 for more details. Read Ezekiel 38 and 39 for more details. And they shall come and see my glory. Yeah, when they're destroyed. I will set a sign among them, and will send escapees, fugitives. Palit means fugitives. Fugitives from who? From the dragon. Fugitives. The dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. And see, the testimony of Yehoshua is the gathering of all Israel, to return the kingdom of Israel to its proper glory. But see, that's not the testimony of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ's testimony is exactly the opposite. You see what King James Version did. So, escapees. What are these escapees going to do? What are these fugitives? Just like EliYah the prophet was a fugitive hiding from King Ahab, so will these two witnesses be fugitives and hiding from the forces of the dragon, the sons of Japheth, Europe, and Russia. Unto the Gentiles. And who is going to be the first victim? Tarshish. Remember, I did the video about who or where is Tarshish. Pliny the Younger and others said, beyond the pillars of Heracles. That would be beyond or west of the Strait of Gibraltar. When you go west of the Strait of Gibraltar, you come to the Americas. So they will go, the two witnesses will go to Tarshish first. Ezekiel 60. Let's go to 60 for just a second here. Backs that up. The coast shall wait, because the ships of Tarshish will be first. See that? First, chief, to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, unto Shem, Jehovah Elohim, the Holy One of Israel. This is talking about the restoration of Zion, the future glory of Zion. After darkness covers the earth and gross darkness the Gentiles. The Gentiles will also have to come, because their lands are wasted, are destroyed. So we go back to the two witnesses in Isaiah 66. And what are they going to do? They're going to go to Tubal. I need to pull this back up. Isaiah 66. Isaiah 60, I mean. Because it's very important for me to compare these two scriptures while I'm doing this. It's absolutely essential. Isaiah 60. So they're going to be flying in the clouds like doves to the windows on the ships of Tarshish first. Now, what do we have here in Isaiah 66? It says essentially the same thing. To Tarshish first, to Pul and Lud of the bow, Tubal, son of Japheth, Yavan, son of Japheth, to the coastlands, that would be the European coastlands and southern and northern Africa, to hear my fame, to see my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. That's going to be the two witnesses, the fugitives, the EliYah, the prophet to come. And they shall bring all your brethren for an offering to Jehovah out of the Gentiles. It says upon horses in King James Version, but that's not right. Upon birds. Now we go to Isaiah 60. They fly as a cloud like doves to their windows on ships of Tarshish. Flying ships, airliners, warbirds, airliners. Sus are warbirds and airliners. You see, Jehovah chose that word. You are now in an age, the age of air flight, to understand what that means. So open up the brain cells and learn. Upon airliners and in chariots, buses, and in covered wagons. Covered wagons, like palanquin. And upon swift beasts to my holy mountain, and upon anything that can carry these people back to his holy mountain. This is what the two witnesses, the fugitives, the EliYah, the prophet, to come to bring the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers. In other words, taking Israel all back home to the Abba of Israel. Says Jehovah, the children of Israel will come in as an offering in a clean vessel in the house of Jehovah. And they, the children of Israel, will become a kingdom of priests, and they will take the place of the Levites on behalf of the Gentiles, says Jehovah. And in those days, you can read in Revelation, talks about a new heaven and new earth, which will I make, will remain before me, says Jehovah, so that your seed and your name, the name of Israel, and the name Jerusalem shall remain. And shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Shabbat to another, all the flesh shall come and worship before me, says not the Lord, but Jehovah. And they will go and look on the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, because their worm, their scarlet, their stuff, their crimson, it means any and all of that. It does not say shall not die, it says shall die. And it does not say neither, it says, and their fire shall be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence unto all flesh. Who are these people they are talking about? The ones who ordered the invasion of Israel. So I ask you to prepare. Am I saying this is it? Nope, I am not saying this is it. I'm asking you not to be sleeping. I'm asking you to be prepared. You do not want to be what Paul talked about in, is it 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3, or is it 2? Let's go look. Verse 1, but at the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of not the Lord, but Jehovah, so comes as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety. Remember last week or 2 weeks ago, I did a video about how the president of Europe, which is the president of Hungary right now, and Donald Trump, after the election, are planning on some kind of a peace conference between Russia and Europe and NATO. Well, while they are saying peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as a travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, should not be in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. If that day overtakes you as a thief, if you're not ready, then you are children of darkness. That's what he is saying. You are all children of the light and children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. Therefore let us not sleep, as others do, figuratively speaking, but let us watch. Are you paying attention? If this day comes upon you as a thief in the night, you are in darkness. Now I think that I have done enough in this video for today. I hope you're paying attention now.